And welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod once again on Sky Sport and Rugby Pass. Big week to talk about. We've got the Matatu win in the final out of nowhere. How did that happen? And how will we see progression and evolving times in women's rugby off the back of Aupiki? We'll have a look at what happened in Super Rugby Pacific as well. Should we be selecting All Blacks from Japan, considering the amount of them that next year will be playing over there? The response to our Mount Rushmore question, what's happening at the moment with Moana Pasifika? That seems to be going off the rails. And also, if we've got a little bit more time, we're going to do a few wacky questions we've had from YouTube from some of the viewers and listeners who love the pod and have plenty to say about what we have to say. So before we get going, to my left, Blues legend James Parsons.
How are?
Very, very well. And over in Japan, 6-time Super Rugby champion, and straight out of the sin bin into the pod, it is Bryn Hall.
Yeah, g'day lads. Yeah, I was a bit of a naughty boy yesterday, so thankfully it didn't have a massive influence on our boys losing the game. So good win for us yesterday in terrible conditions. So 10-man rugby, a lot of box kicks is like it would down south. So
let's start off with Matatu and how they beat the Manawa. Unbelievable, Matatu! Really. No one predicted it for 5 weeks, and here we are. The Manawa, they're not the champions.
Yeah, very strange, and it's probably not. I don't want to take away from the Matatu winning, but it's probably some of the Manawa's defensive behaviours that probably put them in trouble. They had 16 penalties, which gave those opportunities, which those threes were the difference. The Matatu tackled at 90%, and they managed to have a hell of a lot more run metres. I think they averaged about just under 7 run metres per carry versus 3.5. For Manawa, which those are reverse stats of what we'd seen in previous weeks. So they certainly brought something on attack and defence, but it was that ill discipline that gave them the opportunities, and in the end that was the difference. But they still had a chance to win it. They put themselves in a position to win it, but missed that kick.
Yeah, 2 goal kicks. 2 of them. The last one, particularly, Bryn, that was a gimme. That's a throw over.
Get into a position to just win the game, and you come back and score that line out more try, and then get the opportunity to have that penalty to win it. To be honest, the Matatu, I think, thankfully for them, it was probably the right decision, that ball not going over. And that's not me having one eye. It's just the fact in that moment for that penalty, there were 3 instances where penalties should have been given away, or there was interference off the ball that I saw in that last 80th minute. So watching that game, I was like, the Matatu, they've dodged. I mean, they've been gutted here with that decision making. But I thought that the Manawa played a little bit tight in that last 10 minutes. Some uncharacteristic probably errors in that second half probably led to that as well, and along with Renee Holmes getting some pretty crucial penalty kicks to put it with a little bit of a buffer.
But I thought Du Plessis and Brooker are just, wow, man. Like, Du Plessis, I think she had 9 carries for 67 metres, 11 tackles, which was just 2 behind Kendra Reynolds. Being an open side, you expect them to have a hell of a lot, and then 6 carries for Brooker for 92 metres. So, I don't know, they definitely penetrated, they kept the ball alive once they got in behind that defence, and those were key moments that actually led to tries and were a big difference in the end.
It was an incredible performance considering, Bryn, they only won 1 game in the round robin. I know it's a very short round robin, there's only 3 games, but to have a champion that has only won 1 game from the round robin, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Oh, well, I think for the competition, you'd like to obviously have more than just your 4 teams that go straight into a semi-final. I think, we talk around in the top 8, being able to have teams that might win 3 or 4 games, but are in the dance, and that's a perfect example of being able to be in semi-final football and being able to play whether your record's good or not. But, I think I look at the Matatu last year, a lot of their games, and even this year, they were close, and they were just losing games and not being able to find a way to win. But again, they have had a lot of success. A lot of those players have been in the Canterbury system, being able to play in NPC finals and understanding what finals footy's like. And I thought the ability of that, and I guess the likes of Brooker coming back, who I thought was a massive injection for that group, not only defensively, but the attacking ability that she was able to have him penetrate with Amy Du Plessis, who I think is, her work rate is tremendous for an outside back. And so I think they'll be crucial for that Black Ferns. But I thought, Du Plessis had a great Aupiki, I thought.
I think we've got to be mindful that the Matatu actually pushed the Chiefs Manawa quite hard in round robin. They were ahead for the majority of that game, and it was actually probably the ill discipline of the Matatu on that occasion that led to them it just gave the Chiefs the ability to plug the corner and go to their rolling maul, and it was all over. And in the end, it was a bit of a deficit. So there's something about their style of play that troubled the Manawa, and on their day they just got it right. And they, I just think the Manawa got it wrong. They just challenged areas a little bit too hard and didn't adjust the referee, and probably could have been pinged a few more times. I know you think that, Bryn. There was quite a few opportunities where it could have been a penalty the other way. So, it's a good way to spice up the comp. They haven't lost. This is their first loss, and it was a final. It is crazy to think, but it's certainly, I think it makes it exciting, and that the depth is growing. It's not just in one region, and they got better throughout the tournament. Looking forward to where that competition may end up in the future. The one thing a lot of the male game gets is it's too defence orientated, and that's why there's a desire to increase ball and play. So you don't want defence taking over and changing that, because I think that's its point of difference. But I think, as all coaches and players, you'll want to shore up. You won't want to be leaking as many points as that. So I think that's the progression. But if you use Paul's try on the weekend, the body's in motion, a little ID, centre coming down, second five popping out, and then out of the blind shot, Paul pops up on the shoulder and runs straight through. We just weren't seeing that innovation last season, and I think that's, even Amy Rule's try, if you watch, the first pod gets on the outside of about the fifth Chiefs defender, and that shortens the defensive line, and then the halfback has to slip in, and then the Chiefs halfback is on Amy Rule. It's not a fair contest, and there's a player inside, so she gets caught in two minds and then straight through. But those little understanding how to manipulate the defence, they need to get on that outside to trap those defenders to create that opportunity. Is awesome to see in terms of the tactical side of the game improving.
I think the goal kicking is probably one area all teams are able to get a little bit better, and I think it wasn't just Willison on the weekend. There was also Rohe Demont missed a kick pretty relatively easily to be able to try win a game as well. So hopefully a little bit more when it comes to the goal kicking. That's probably one area that they need to shore up a little bit. But I've been really enjoyed the attacking kicks. Hazel Chubik was great for the Manawa this year, and then even Dellinger and even Rosie Kelly get the opportunity to do that as well. And Demont and even the other outside backs are able to kick as well. So that's been a great progression that I think we'll see a continuation and even get a lot better next year in that competition.
Who was your favourite player this year? Who was the player of the competition for you?
I found this hard. There were so many, quality players. I do talk about that midfield of Matatu, and I think, Brooker's injury and coming back and the way she's performed is exciting. But I just can't go past Amy Rule, man. Her stats, I think she had 11 carries, which were the most on the weekend. Seven tackles, which was extremely high. I know they struggled at set piece, but I think without her there, they wouldn't even have won their own ball. Her skill set around the field, there's just so many elements of her game that has improved. She looks like she's just loving playing. She's going over, I think, to play for the Brumbies as well. So she's one of those players that just wants to play. So I think I'd go her. Just behind her is Luca Connor as well. I thought I've got to look after the tight five, of course, lads. But I think Luca Connor was outstanding. Not only her set piece, they ran at 100% again on the final. Line out throwing's quality versus about 66%. So I think you've got to acknowledge that she's really good at her core roles, but she's great. That little run around the breakdown, and she's got a couple of turnovers at the breakdown as well. So she's a complete package for me at the moment, Luca Connor as well.
And she loves to get on the back of a line-out drive.
Yeah, but I always have this discussion with people. It's not as easy as they think. When your head's in there and you're having to work out how many times do you see people dive on the 5 metre line or something there's an art to it, and she is bloody good at it.
Yeah.
I was terrible at it, but that's why I've got better all tries. But it's a skill. It's a skill.
I think he's arguing too much about it.
It does require 7 forwards in front of her to do a really good job as well, of course.
That's great. That's great knowledge from you there, Jeff. We talked a lot around the outside backs. I love the Blues outside backs, Paula and Policy, who were great. And then you've obviously got all the other outside backs that we've talked around. You've got Paul, Willison, and all those kind of players. But I think for me, Matatu, I don't think Matatu won without Grace Brooker this year, and I think she was massive for that group. Just around whether it be defensively or just her ability to be able to give her the advantage, but then also her distribution and triple threat game, I think was a real massive key in them winning that game. Talked about Amy Duplessis as well, but then I think another one that I did enjoy was Jenkins as well. She was someone that I really enjoyed watching, and she was really robust and could be someone that obviously hopefully jumps into that Blackfern squad. And but I know that's all the Matatu players, but I think also Hazel Chubik at 10 for the Chiefs. I think what she can bring with that kicking game could be pretty pivotal. And the Black Ferns, obviously Ruhe the monster, but whether they can put her at 15, Renee Holmes is there as well. But I think having that backup option with Chubik, I thought she did great. Aupiki as well, sorry.
It was a wonderful Aupiki, great competition. Super Rugby Pacific now carries on, becomes the centre of our focus, really, because there's been a busy few weeks with the Six Nations and Aupiki and Pacific going on. Boy, the Brumbies Crusaders promised as ever to be a classic. Then the Brumbies sent over a team lacking 7 Wallabies or whatever it was, and really that probably sucked the life out of this game. And that could well be the story for a number of games so far during Super Rugby Pacific. And if you look at the weekend and you look at the way the games played out, and I think certainly if you look to compare it to the way the Warriors in the NRL had a huge crowd, even had All Blacks in the stands, it is a difficult sell, this mass resting thing from both sides of the Tasman, Jipper.
Yeah, I mean, no player can play every game. Like, let's make that really clear. And I think there's a number of players. It is individual specific. I know there's the 2 weeks, but potentially it's misunderstood a little bit. But you've got to pick and choose the opposition you do it against. It's a tough trip to Christchurch. We all know that. I thought they stayed in the fight longer than I probably expected, and that was probably just the Crusaders weren't on song as much as they'd like. But I am a firm believer, you just look through history of Super Rugby, man, if you don't give guys a crack and you need them to step up finals time, every player will need a rest. It's not just the All Blacks. At some stage, there's other players resting, but everyone obviously notices the All Blacks as such.
But at times during the season, you run into weekends where the competition loses its momentum because so many teams are doing it. And then you have next to that lopsided games like 59-0 Hurricanes versus Moana Pasifika, and it becomes a bit of a difficult watch.
You're probably the toughest week if you're talking around competitiveness and even the quality, I guess, of the rugby and the star power. You know, you look at the Crusaders at the moment, 8 of the All Blacks with Ethan Blackhead have been injured now. They're out. Those are big selling points of being able to play teams or even people in junior want to be able to come to games because you want to watch the All Blacks. And so, it's tough. But I guess at the same time, with the Brumbies, they rested. That's one thing that I was very surprised with them resting a lot of their players, especially with coming down to Christchurch and how successful they've been, and maybe wanting to see that the Crusaders are a little bit underdone with the All Blacks and injuries and that. But again, like Jip said, I think you've got to be able to balance your squad right and giving guys opportunities throughout the year to then come finals time. They've at least had some form of experience and been able to play in those, hotly contested matches. So, but it's a little bit tough. It's, when you do see the Warriors, they pack out a Mount Smart and you see a great fan base being able to go out there, and you're looking at Eden Park and it's pretty much empty around that, So I guess, but it comes back to the point around, the players that are playing, and then obviously, I guess the brand of footy as well, which was probably just wasn't to the standard where it's been the last couple of weeks.
Well, I think we should probably blame you, Bryn, because you won 6 titles and it's just not fun coming to Christchurch. So the Brumbies Wallabies said no, thank you.
Well, the fact they were undefeated, I can understand. I think Larkham actually brought up in the post-match saying that we needed to be able to rest players, and this was kind of the plan around it, and giving guys opportunities to be in that environment to see how they go. They just probably didn't get it right. So, but yeah, I think Brumbies and Crusaders rivalries, it doesn't matter who really is playing. It's always a hotly contested rivalry internally between the players. But yeah, it was a little bit disappointing in that respect.
Not when Lester Whaianuku's going down Channel 1.
Yeah.
Holy dooly. The open side of the Brumbies just sold his other defenders down the river because he went so hard into that space. It just created such a big disconnect from the backline defenders. I think it was the hooker in the first instance, and then it was a blindside winger in the second instance. And they must have just been going, cheers, mate. Because if you're at the back of the tail of the line out, you've almost got to slide sideways and buy time for you guys to connect that seam. And he just flew out at Cody, and then Cody just throws it off twice. You'd think you'd learn from the first time, but man, he just did not miss that seam. He just hit it and kept fighting. And the second one was probably more impressive because he had a lot more bodies to get rid of.
When you look at his all-round skill set, on top of his obvious potency with ball in hand, has he got everything that he needs?
Yeah. I think he's back. I think it helps also that he's not chopping and changing between midfield. I think you can have both with Caleb and Leicester in the squad come the end of the year, and I think they are different wingers and they're out and out left wingers. Leicester also has the ability to play midfield, but I think giving him the one role, focus on it as long as he can stay there back-to-back weeks for the Crusaders. He's pretty hard to ignore. Holy dooly, like that's like they're not a bad team, the Brumbies. The Blues aren't a bad team the week before. Like he's on serious fire. So is Caleb. It's just how that mix looks. I think they've got to find space for both of them. Where Will Jordan's at, we don't know. Mark Talaire's obviously carving up. There's the Sean Stevenson, Damien McKenzie, Stephen Perifetta logjam. So whatever that looks like, I'm not too sure at this stage, but I think there's room for both of those players.
When you look at form, Bryn, right now, and you feel like Richie Mo'unga is maybe a little bit behind at the moment, having that element makes you think that opens up a chance for a guy like Stevenson at 15, because that access of Mo'unga and Barrett at 10 and 15 doesn't feel like a shoo-in right now.
Oh, obviously Richard, we wanted to play a little bit better. Obviously at the Brumbies, he had a great game against the Blues, and I guess in those big games, he goes very good in that. And obviously was a little bit off on the weekend, but he'll bounce back for that. But I think the biggest thing around for a guy like Sean Stevenson, if Will Jordan can't come back, I think if for whatever reason that injury doesn't happen, I think then Sean's a perfect person to be able to then come into the All Blacks, because he can slot in as an out-and-out 15, but then going into that winger role like Will Jordan would do. So,
and that's where he performed well, Bryn, for the AB's 15.
Yep.
Like if we think back to that tour, he was outstanding. You'd
have to think obviously Richie and Bodie are definitely going to be in the squad, and then you're talking around the wingers of Caleb Clark, Mark Talaire. You have to think Leicester Fainga'anuku, and then it comes really down to your third 10, your Damien McKenzie and your Stephen Perifetta, those two battling out within a Sean Stevenson. Is he battling out with those guys there? So with Will Jordan, I think if Will Jordan isn't selected, then I think a guy like Sean Stevenson, he's probably the perfect guy that can probably jump in. And I think given the chance at the Rugby Championship will be perfect for him. There's a little bit of time, get him in the squad, be able to see how he goes, and then if it works out, he can have a Nehe Milner-Skudder or Semi Reece George Bridge when they were first selected in that 2019 year.
Looking at next year, speaking of Richie heading overseas, we've got Smith, Barrett overseas, we've got rumours now that RTS could be going to Japan. We've got all of these people who are, central parts of New Zealand rugby right now, heading over to Japan. Should we have a rule similar to the Ghetto clause that was forever over in Australia, where you can select a player who's done long service? So that might rule out a person like RTS, but a person like Beauden Barrett, it seems like they've said no to it. But should there be a rule to allow someone like that to play for the All Blacks from Japan?
Oh, I personally like the way it is at the moment, just purely because it will be hard to play, and this is nothing, I mean, Bryn can actually talk to this better than I am. He's playing in the Japanese top league, but I don't think it would prepare you as well for international rugby as, say, Super Rugby would prepare you, Bryn.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is we can't fall behind. And if you look at everyone that's probably had a sabbatical, it's taken a few months to get back up to speed. So I'm not saying there is no future with it not happening, but there's also, with one lever you pull to keep a small amount of players, how many then start to go offshore, and our NPC struggles, our Super Rugby struggles.
Yeah, and the sponsors don't necessarily get the pay.
Turn up.
What do you think, Bryn, being over in Japan and seeing the play over there, do you think that the play over there is of a level where you could walk out of that and into test footy for New Zealand?
If you're an experienced person and know your routine and a very professional understanding of what it looks like for you for a week to week, you can probably get away with it. But the pace over here is very quick, but the physicality and I guess the level of standard is probably a little bit lower than obviously your Super Rugby. So to be able to, if you're playing here all year round and then you're going to be able to come into the All Blacks environment, unless I think if you're a very experienced person and know your routine and what it looks like for you to be able to, doesn't really matter where you're playing, it will be not too bad. But I think you are right. It does take players a little bit to acclimatise back into that high tempo, high physicality and being able to play at that level. It takes a little longer. But at the same time, I could probably imagine Razor would be thinking around, he wouldn't mind having a Richie Mo'unga or a Beauden Barrett being able to play post the World Cup, So whether there are rules around if it's a 50 cap to the All Blacks where you're given a service of 100 games at Super Rugby level, it might open that window and having those conversations. is probably a little bit more open-minded around that now. I think probably 5 years ago, I was in Jipper's case where, if you start opening up doors, then it goes into your NPC, your Super Rugby, and the quality of having players and being able to stick them around. But I definitely think there could be a conversation where there are some players and there might be a Ghetto law or a kind of caps or international caps that you do play. Because I think, we probably want to say, Richie's 28 and you probably got his best rugby ahead of him and maybe 3-4 years on another World Cup campaign. We'd love to have a player like that to be able to play for the All Blacks. So, but yeah, I guess we'll see what happens in that space.
I think there's probably a couple of players that help the argument that it's doable. Is probably like a Quade Cooper, Colin Betty. They certainly came back and performed very well at international level.
You got Quagga Smith in your team. He's obviously probably going to go to the World Cup straight out of Japanese rugby, right?
Yeah, he is. And again, he's unbelievable. And I guess the good thing about Quagga is he just understands his body. He knows what he needs, and then he's got a good ability to be able to. He's had experience of going to Japan and doing that for 4 or 5 years now. So he's got the experience around it, and you can do it. But I just think, if we have a lot of people that head over there, I think, if it's not just, you kind of 1 or 2 people that you're seeing in sabbaticals in New Zealand, if there's 10, 15 players that are heading over, you look at South Africa, they play all around the world, it is a little bit harder to be able to then come back and, I guess, acclimatise to playing a rugby championship or going into World Cup, just playing a kind of Japanese league.
I don't know if Bryn would have hung around as long as he did had there been the opportunity.
Or not.
Do you know
Definitely
what I mean?
not.
And that's a 6-time title-winning 9 that you want teaching the next level.
No.
Going back to Harbour, if you look at Lewis Joltimer, who was at Harbour under Bryn for a number of years, didn't play hardly any footy. He's now carving up in the Premiership.
Yeah.
Without that apprenticeship with Bryn, they used to get there, 40-odd minutes before everyone, and Bryn would take him through all his drills, and he just got better and better and better. Bryn's not there. He doesn't get that opportunity. He's not doing what he's doing now. It is a powerful part of why we're so strong.
Yeah, you had that with Kevy, did you?
Yeah, 100%. Tom McCartney as well.
Yeah.
Massively. So they're obviously we want to keep the best players. I want to keep them as well. But the flow on effect can impact our whole rugby ecosystem, which would, need a rethink.
It's interesting that the conversations are obviously happening behind closed doors because some of the players are asking for it.
Why wouldn't you? You negotiated a deal, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. And you got a sabbatical in the past.
I'd probably try too.
Got a sabbatical in the past, you might as well try the next step, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it appears to be working that way. Let's move on to the Waratahs against the Chiefs. Same night as the Crusaders Brumbies game. It was 24-14 to the Chiefs over the Waratahs. The Chiefs weren't as slick.
No, they just couldn't get their game going. I worked with Angus Tarvell on the weekend, and sort of spoke to him, and we just sort of spoke about every time they were just about to crack the Waratahs' defence, they'd knock it on or lose it at the breakdown. So it is a tough place to go. And we've talked about how the Waratahs are desperate. They're fighting for everything. Not saying the Chiefs aren't, but they gave some guys some opportunities. To get out of there 24-14, I think they'll be happy. Undefeated. Yep. Everyone in their squad's playing really well, which makes selection hard. Once they can get through managing the squad, I think once they can get up and running of a consistent 23, they are going to be tough to stop, the Chiefs.
And obviously, they dominated a lot of that game, and obviously the Waratahs just really stuck in there and made it a real niggly fight to be able to just hang in there. And obviously Sean Stevenson with that grubber ices the game. But I think you look at some teams that haven't played well and they've dropped games. You look at the Crusaders, they dropped it against the Fijian draw, and then you look at the Blues, they didn't drop their game as a quality Brumbies side, but they were favoured in that match. So, you could easily say that the Waratahs could have pinched that one away and then they don't finish 5 from 5. So it just shows, I think, at the moment that the Chiefs, they've been able to grow depth with bringing in players, giving them opportunities, and then still been able to win ugly, and I guess go 5 from 5 but still being the form team and being able to get a win like that will be pretty important then going against the Blues, which will be a massive grudge match, which it always is in Hamilton.
Statistically, totally agree with that. There'll be legends coming in left, right and centre. This game is big for both teams. There's a lot of feeling behind it. So it's about controlling that during the week, but I don't think there'll be any lack of motivation. They would have probably swum home to play this game. Do you know what I mean? There's that much desire in it. But if you look at the Chiefs though, Bryn, they had 61% possession, 1 clean break. If you look at the past weeks, they probably had about 45 and 13 or 14 average. So their game just couldn't get going. So I think that shows, but they fought to win. But the key for me is they tackled at 92%. And I know people hate saying this, but defence, honestly, if you're tackling at those levels, you are going to be tough to beat, even if you're playing poorly with ball in hand. So, although it wasn't pretty on attack, the steal and the resolve they showed defensively and, the breakdown to get crucial turnovers, there's a lot to like about that performance as well.
The Drua versus the Highlanders. Now, I stuffed this up in my picks. I was like, I was 50-50 on it, and I decided to roll the dice and have a crack at the Drua based off, I suppose, what we'd seen the previous 2 weeks. And I was so wrong.
How much does it say for, adversity so close to kick-off, captain's run, they lost players, the day of the game they lost players, that, sort of galvanises a team? You look at the front row, like De Groot and Ainsley were amazing. Lenny Upasai was huge. Tucker filling in late at lock. Nakora Broughton, here's a guy that was playing for the Barbarian under-20s last year, and played unbelievably well, pushed hard for player of the tournament. Now he's down there. That little grubber, I don't know, they're just, I feel like the mojo's back. Aaron Smith he orchestrated pretty much every try apart from the grubber through. It was either him, but so often we look at that and credit him. But I know that he'll be crediting that forward pack, man. Billy Harmon is just leading that pack. Hell of a skipper. Willie's coming of age. Some inexperience there, but man, the grit, fight. It's typical Highlanders way. And then with a guy like Aaron, I thought Flau was quite good as well. Flau Whakatawa off the bench. I don't know. Things are looking to turn, I feel, for the Highlanders. And they're building great depth. They've got a lot of injuries and guys that will come back and challenge their squad. They're now in the 8. There's a lot to like. With
the Highlanders, I think obviously Aaron Smith and him coming back and what he brings, especially in that 22-metre zone. He did that last week against the Force. Very simple, very going back to pretty much when Tony Brown was there. Get your forwards around the corner, good breakdown, clean, good body height, and then getting quick ball and Aaron being able to make decisions, being able to put players away, or being able to go himself for that little swipe that he was able to around the heart. And so that doesn't happen with unlike the things that Jip was saying with their forward pack, being able to really bite down on the bullet and get the job done in that 22-metre zone. Because I think earlier in the year, they're making a lot of mistakes around that, unforced errors, missing little breakdown penalties here and there when they were attacking. And so they've kind of found their mojo, and it seems to be a great play for them. If they can get into that area and defend well, they're able to score points like they have against the Force and Ndroa. Now, I know that's the Force and Ndroa, which are two quality sides, but I think, it'll be interesting to see when they do start to play the New Zealand teams, if they can have that same efficiency in the 22-metre zone with Nagy, which he's been doing the last 2 weeks.
When they won in 2015, their kicking game was exceptional. They did not play any rugby. Aaron Smith's kicking was outstanding. Mitch Hunt on the weekend, Sam Gilbert. They kicked for 642 metres. Every other side probably averaged this weekend around sort of just under 400. So they kicked a hell of a lot more. They had 12 rucks in their own half. 12 rucks versus 36 for the Ndroa. 2 of those rucks were in their own 22. So they just said, no, if you guys want to chance your arm, chance it, but we're going to, take possession of any turnovers that you give us, and they were just ruthless in their own half. But that's their mojo. When they get their kicking game right and they get that ball in front of their forwards, they are really tough to beat underneath that roof, and that can't be ignored. Previous weeks, those rucks in their own 22, are double figures. Rucks in their own half are high, 30s as well. So there was definitely a shift in the style they were playing.
And they have an opportunity now to build on that confidence because they're taking on Moana Pasifika. Now, Moana Pasifika, 59-0 at home against the Canes. It wasn't a repeat, Bryn, last year of when Moana Pasifika got up against the Canes in what turned out to be an historic win. What is going on there with Moana Pasifika? Why are they so far off the boil?
Well, I just think discipline. I think discipline's a big part of that, and I think you look at a lot of their tries, their first 2 tries, 3 tries were off an advantage play. So attacking-wise, when you can have the ability to have that advantage off long passages of phases, you're able to have a lot more confidence to throw the ball around and being able to chance your arm a little bit more. And so, and their defensive efforts as well, I think they were operating at just under 80% or 79% tackling rate, So when you're defending at those kind of numbers, it's really hard to be able to build pressure and from that. And so, and then the Hurricanes, they had their moments. What do they have? They had almost 2-1, being able to have running meters. The defenders beating were like a lot more, the clean breaks, and so defensively they were able to put under a lot of pressure. And so, but it's unfortunately sometimes it's at different times they're doing things well, and then the other parts of the area they're not doing well. So consistently in different games, they're not being able to have moments of consistently being good in all areas. And so I think that's the trouble for the Moana at the moment. And so, it doesn't get any tougher, it doesn't get any easier for them. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go.
On the weekend, I know it was a blowout, but it was the first time their set piece probably let them down. They were operating at 91% going into that weekend at line-out time. Last year, they were in the 60s. So there's massive growth there. Scrum time, they were in the 90s as well. Those two areas, they struggled on the weekend. They didn't quite get what they wanted, which didn't allow them to play their game. They were first in the competition leading into that game for post-contact meters. So there's a lot of their attacking stats that are really good. What the Hurricanes did really well is, if you watch Brett Cameron out the back of Proctor, all those bodies in motion, Ray Arce, that's where they can utilise, because at the moment they're winning collisions, Moana Pasifika, but they need Liliafano and co to be active out the back because it's just a brick wall. Teams are starting to pick up that, they're big ball carriers, trying to use Almua as well. And as a defender, Bryn, you'll know this, like if there's no animation out the back of forward runners, you can just tee off. You can get off the line, chop, get your breakdown efficiency. So if they can get some growth there, attacking-wise, and keep the success they've had at set piece, that's the attacking side of the game. Defensively, they've got to get in and disrupt breakdown. They just let the ball be too quick. Roygaard shouldn't be running between two forwards. That's just, they didn't have time to set. They didn't know. Do you know what I mean? Like that speed of ball just kills you. But the animation, the work of guys like Billy Proctor, man, the Canes played well. You can't take away for how well the Canes played.
Speaking of the Hurricanes and what's going well for them, Kini Naholo, is he a chance to take that spot from Julian Savia as we head further into the competition? Do you think that is a thing that will happen?
Well, I definitely think it's putting it into debate, isn't it? Because I think what you're going to get with Jules, and we've talked about how well he's been playing in this stage of his career and what he's been able to bring to him. But Kini is an out-and-out finisher. Geez, man, you get him a bit of space or even close to the line, he's got the ability to be able to beat you one-on-one, offload, he's been able to get over the advantage line, bump you off. And so he probably just hasn't had a lot of chances at Super Rugby. I know he was with the Crusaders for a little bit, didn't get a lot of opportunities. Was it originally at the Chiefs, I believe? He was given an opportunity there. But obviously there's been a lot of players that have been about to play in front of him. But I think a guy like Kini, the more opportunities that you can give him, I saw it last year. The amount of times at training that he is able to beat players and score tries and get over the advantage line, it's almost just it's like he needs his opportunity. He's been able to get it the last couple of weeks. And so you talk around Sean Stevenson and co, you want to be able to be in a purple rain of form, rich rain of form. It's guys like Kini like that. I think you just keep staying with them. You know what you're going to get with Jules, and Jules will get his opportunity throughout the year. But I think with a guy like Kini, he's got a lot of potential, very similar to his brother Waisaki, and being able to be a massive game breaker. And I think in those big games, sometimes you need something a little bit special like that. And Kini definitely has that ability to do that in big games.
Sometimes you're best to leave a young guy out there and just let him keep running hot until he's not, rather than saying, we'll put you on the bench, we'll give you a rest this week, and then you bring him back the following week and he doesn't have the same rhythm.
They're lucky in that both Julian and Kini Naholo can also play left wing, so they've got quite a lot of flexibility there around the back.
Yeah, I think Ray Arce and Morby, though,
yeah,
they're two key cogs that just plug themselves in straight away.
Morby's a hell of a value for money player, Bryn.
Yeah. No, he is. He's deceptively fast, got a great kicking game, and he's a smart footy player as well. So I think he's at the Highlanders. He's definitely one that got away. He's down at Stag Country, and so obviously with the Highlanders now, with the Hurricanes. But yeah, obviously a guy like that, very similar to Kini Naholo. The more experience that he can get to be able to play in the backfield and have those games and being able to build confidence. There's actually a lot of players in that Hurricanes team that's got a lot of mojo. You look at Cam Roygaard and Brett Cameron, their combination has come along really nicely and very young in their careers. Well, not more so Brett, but Cam Roygaard, giving these guys opportunities. I think you just keep going well with them until, like Gypsy, until the wheels kind of fall off and you're able to bring a bit more experience back in. But I've been thoroughly impressed with Billy Proctor, man. He was my player of the round, I thought.
He is unbelievable.
Man, he is seriously... He's another guy that we've talked around the midfield that could be in the possibility of being the All Blacks. His work rate, his decisiveness, his ability to have animation. He runs great lines. It was great to see him to be able to have distribution to go up the back to Cameron with Ray Arce roving. But man, he's a guy that I think for the Hurricanes is massive, a massive glue man in that team. And he's taken it to another level where he's definitely in consideration for hopefully IR honours. Not this year, but post the Rugby World Cup as well.
Speaking of Billy Proctor, we spoke to Jason Holland after that match, and he goes, it was quite hard convincing him to play there. I was like, holy dooly, the guy had like 10 carries and 8 tackles in the first 40 minutes. What Jason Holland said, he goes, I always go through the tape, and every week I'm like, who made that tackle, or who got that turnover? And every time he reckons it's Billy Proctor.
Yeah.
Doing the stuff that you don't see. And he just said he's just our unsung hero.
Yeah.
Which is big raps from any coach.
Totally. That's the stuff that gets you excited.
It did get me excited, actually. I love a man that just doesn't get too much praise, it just gets pumped up.
Gets in there.
On that note, I actually didn't get to have my moment with the Crusaders, but I want to single out Tom Christie. I saw the little way in there.
Yeah.
But, mate, this guy, 18 tackles, second in rucks hit, 3 defensive rucks hit, 1 turnover. You've asked him to carry, he's got 9 carries. Week prior, he was like 28 tackles. Like, he is a machine. Like, he just doesn't get he's not the Dalton Papali'i, he's not the Santan. I understand that, but man, he is critical to that Crusaders pack. He just fronts up week in, week out, and some of his defensive stats are just ridiculous. Like, it's like him at 18 tackles, the next bloke's at 9. You know, like, he's doing a lot of work. And I know Sevens get it down their channel, but man, he works hard. I mean, Bryn, you'll be able to talk to it, but it was awesome to watch.
Yeah, he is definitely an unsung hero, and obviously doesn't get the praises because you talk around all the dirty work, you know, of Billy Proctor. Man, he just does that consistently week in and week out. His turnover ball, obviously a feature as a 7 is really important, but he always finds his ways to be able to get himself into the game. That's just based around, obviously, aerobically. He's got the ability to be able to stay in games. But yeah, he doesn't get obviously the praise of obviously your Dalton Papali'i, your Sam Canes, but man, he's massive for that group. I know he's obviously a leader within the defensive unit with Tamati Ellison. He's massive around what the weeks look like, and a smart footy player as well. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll flat mine of mine actually as well. So Tom, mate, we're big lovers of the show here, mate. So keep chipping away. Good
flatty, does the dishes.
Oh, not bad actually. He was actually pretty good. He wasn't too bad. Yeah, good cook. He loves cooking. He's quite healthy.
You're asking the wrong bloke. I sat next to this bloke for 10 years, and he is the messiest locker I've ever seen. I used to have to kick his everything away from my locker. It's like, mate, I like mine pristine. And he's just, sorry, mate. Sure enough, I'll be back, 5 minutes from strapping, and there's just messy.
I wouldn't have picked that, because look how beautifully presented he was.
He probably did it just to wind me up.
I'm just, when it comes to the rugby lock, I'm just an all go. I'm just, man, I'm not that great. Jippy used to absolutely rip me, man. Jippy had a bad day, and that bloody sock was on his side of the locker. He was absolutely...
Sock and the 4 boots and bloody half a sushi roll or something. It's like, he rested it all where I'm supposed to sit. It's like, mate, are you trying to make me blow?
Yeah. You got some wasabi.
And I've got a wick about that short, so it doesn't take a hell of a lot.
Honestly, Ross, it got to like the time that I was there at Harbour, every time that I'd just be sitting in my locker, if I see Jippers walking across, coming right at me, I've just taken a quick look at his locker and just seen if anything's there, anything around him, every single time, every day. I was on edge, every day.
Does the skip have power over that?
We kept sitting next to each other, so I think we liked it.
It sounded like you're a glutton for punishment. It's your fault.
Yeah, it probably is.
You're asking for it.
Well, it's because he's a code head. We'd just sit there and talk code when it was nice and clean and tidy.
And you might be able to score a free sushi roll on the side. You're super hungry.
My God.
Whatever was left over.
Anyway, we digress.
I quite like that. One of my favourite things about Tom Christie is he always comes out looking like a heavyweight boxer, and the person who lost the fight.
Yeah.
He always
got up 8 times. Like his eyes like swollen, his ears ripped off. Like
he's the Shane Cameron of New Zealand rugby. Like his face just looks like he's been to war. Like he's led with it.
The Mountain Warrior. Maybe that should be his nickname, Tom Christie, the Mountain Warrior.
It should be. He just runs into the punches and comes out, gets up and carries on.
No, he's huge. He's huge for that group. So may it continue.
Nice, very nice. Now the Blues versus the Force. The Blues rested most of their top guys, so I'm not sure there's a lot that you can take out of it as far as form and what it means for them in the competition, but obviously it was an opportunity, like you say.
Yeah, and I think there'll be a couple of areas. I know Tom Coventry line out at 80%, scrum at 75%. That's something that they'll want to focus on. Retallick and co are putting on a massive amount of pressure at line-out time. Scrum time, they've got a pretty formidable pack. So it's a big week for them to turn that round. I think the other thing that they'll be looking at, and I know Leon's big on this, is when you get in that kill zone, in that 22 metres, they had 11 visits, but they probably just didn't get the reward. Both sides disrupted that breakdown ball really well, but they are leading the comp in terms of visits to 22, but obviously not leading the comp in tries scored. And Bryn will know this. He's pretty ruthless. Like, his expectation is you get in that 22, you come away with points. So those two areas. But guys that got opportunity, I thought Stephen Petafetta was huge. He ended up having 12 runs at the line. People probably, the force maybe didn't know a lot about him like we do as a first receiver, and they let him, do his thing, and I thought he was great. His flatmate, Jacob Meekins, that try was something else.
NRL.
And then Sue For and Signa, guys that just getting opportunity and just delivered. So there was a lot to like, but there were some easy areas that they can fix up going into this Chiefs week with Aotearoa.
You talk about bonus points, and I think letting in that try just on that 77th minute was probably one thing as well that they probably were thinking, get a bonus point win, not playing. Obviously guys were given opportunity, did enough to be able to get that bonus point win, and obviously getting that try scored against them is probably one thing as well that Miller will be a little bit angry.
Yeah, and I think there's both sides defended at 91%, but I think a lot of that was, I spoke about, how Brett Cameron and co at the Hurricanes were so active out the back. Maybe it was too predictable at times, and I know Leon's massive on that active, that active player at the back, but also the active two forwards and backs that are coming out this way. So I think they'll be doing a lot of work on that. So you don't just set, because a couple of times, man, Hamish Stewart absolutely chopped Offa in half, and I didn't know how he could do that. Like, he is not a big man, but he just went low, and I think it's because it's easy when there's no threats out the back, because you're like, I know this is just a one-on-one tackle, and he just threw himself at it, which is courageous for him, but maybe that could have helped a little bit in terms of them being able to get more tries when they had the opportunities.
I'm going down the table, the tipping comp. So I'm down to 193. Super Rugby tipping comp, join the Aotearoa Rugby Pod League if you still can, and just beat us. Except for Jipper, who was up to number 43 after the perfect weekend.
That impressive, though, was at 43.
Yeah, but you're at 90 odd last week. You're making your way up.
Yeah, making my way up.
You're getting into a rhythm.
What's the points on first? 26.
26. So Chieftains, Schweizer, and Jojo 24. Rabbit are on 26. You're only 2 points behind that. Bryn is on 23. I'm on 21. Way off the pace.
It's a tough week. This is a tough week. This one.
It is.
Especially for my heart and head. The Chiefs Blues game is tough.
Yeah, well, if you want to have a look at this tipping league, please come and join us. The winner of the overall league gets $5,000. The winner of our league will come on the show and get to say whatever they like about rugby and about us. So please. Okay, let's go with the first one. MP versus Highlanders. What are you picking?
Landers.
Yep, Landers.
Landers all round. Crusaders versus Reds. Crusaders at Reds, Bryn.
Oh, that'll be a good game. I'll go Crusaders, but it's always a good week. I know there'll be a lot of words said in that around that rivalry, so it'll be good week for them.
Always a little bit of a bogey team for the Crusaders in Queensland. Similar humidity to Fiji, maybe.
Not a similar humidity to Christchurch on a Saturday night in the middle of winter.
No, but I'll go the Crusaders.
One of my favourite memories of Christchurch is during the Lions tour, sitting in the stands in the media box, holding on to some pumpkin soup that they had prepared for the media. Like, just being able to use your fingers on your keyboard on your computer was too hard. So you're holding on, and then they'd score a try, you'd put it down, type, pick it back up, and hold on for dear life.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah, when the weather comes from the mountains, and the wind comes through there, just...
You get a southerly at Orange Theory, you can't beat it.
Yeah.
Well, the Lions enjoyed it that night because it reminded them of home. The Drua versus the Rebels.
This is tough. It isn't in Lautoka, so it is in Suva, and based on the intel we had from Bryn, is that the temperature and the humidity is a little bit less. So
very strong on his weather chat.
So I'm going to continue to back the Rebels.
I'm thinking we should probably give him a weather segment each week. Knows his isobars.
Just to go back on the tipping briefly with the Rebels, I said on the podcast that I would back them, and I was a coward, and I went to the Reds. So I'm going to pick the draw just for the fact in Fiji, just the Fiji element. Yeah,
God, you really just don't like the Rebels, do you, mate?
Oh, I want to pick them, man. They're playing good footy. They're a good rugby side, man.
You said this last week.
I know, but it's Fiji. They're a different team in Fiji. Yeah. So I'm going to go the draw. I'm going to go the draw.
Okay. Chiefs versus the Blues.
Oh, go to Bryn. My heart says the Blues.
I will go the Chiefs.
But
I'll go the Chiefs.
I think it is going to be a 26-0 the Blues won down there last year. I don't think they've forgotten that.
Yeah. Say it.
And they've just got a bit more momentum.
Who are you picking, Jim?
Say it.
I just can't do it. I'm going to pick the Blues. But I just can't do it. I just physically can't do it.
You wanted to. Like, I can see the pain. Like, your whole body reacted.
Hey, this has been like bugging me for 2 days, knowing that I had to pick this game. Like,
Man, this is the first time I've ever seen you like that. Man, you still picked them.
Well, how could you not? Like, it's a heart pick. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Like, the Chiefs are the favourite in the tournament. They're at home. They're more than likely going to win, but you know.
There we go.
Just can't do it.
That's a step. That's a step. That's the first step. And
Yeah.
Who knows what will happen in the coming weeks? This could be the difference between you catching whangamana and...
Nah, I just couldn't do it.
Okay.
Couldn't look at myself in the mirror.
Okay. Brumbies, Waratahs.
Brumbies.
Brumbies.
And Hurricanes I'm taking from both of you
Yes.
versus the Force.
Yes.
Sunday Arvo footy. I'm loving that.
Yeah, straight.
I know that the crowd might not have been there, but I love a bit of Sunday Arvo footy.
Yeah. Get a bit of sun on the biceps.
Yeah, it's just great.
I'm expecting a Sonny Bill Williams singlet underneath the blazer scenario from you at some time.
Absolutely not.
No? Okay. So join us, please, at the Aotearoa Rugby Pod League, and maybe you can join us at the end of Super Rugby Pacific and have a crack on the show here. Also send us an email at Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz. Comment within the YouTube comments section, and we'll have a look at those. And boy, we've had some cool comments this week, so let's jump into that segment of the show right now. The Mount Rushmore of first fives that we discussed last week. Plenty of comments in the YouTube section. To remind people, the Mount Rushmore that was come up with by both Bryn and Jipper was Carter, Wilkinson, Larkham, Sexton. Now, the debating point, which was an easy debating point, I suppose, but an interesting one all the same, people were saying that Sexton can't make it because he hasn't won a World Cup. Is that the be-all and end-all?
No, if you look at his history, he's won a hell of a lot of trophies.
Yeah.
You know, with Leinster as well. I'm just going based on what I've witnessed in terms of his impact on the Irish game. You know, he's been a big part of their turnaround against the All Blacks. And the hard thing is, I just didn't. It's hard for me to know Liner, Fox. Like, I just didn't see them play. Like, I was a boy in short shorts.
Yeah.
And I love my code, but I haven't gone back in time to watch it. So I think that's the beauty of things like this, is you are going to probably stick with your generation, and it's hard to argue one way or the other. But Sexton may have a World Cup at the end of the year.
At the end of the year, and that will change everything. So people were saying, not Sexton, possibly Liner, possibly Fox, Stansky, and another person said Porter.
Stansky's quite a good one.
I suppose the key thing was that when we were talking about it, we were talking about professional era, and really Liner and Fox weren't in that, Borta wasn't in that. Stransky straddled that for a very short period of time.
Hell of a drop kick.
A hell of a drop kick, won a World Cup. Is that enough to beat out Johnny Sexton? Because when you remember Joel Stransky, he only really had 2 or 3 years of international rugby. He wasn't in that team that long.
That's the good point that you bring there, Ross, is obviously, like, you look at Sexton, right, you're looking around 100 plus caps for Ireland, Six Nations, Grand Slam champion, had won a lot of titles with Leinster as well. So you talk about Mount Rushmore, what he's done for the game, you know, I guess games-wise and playing games, he's played a lot more than Stransky. Look, and obviously Stransky did win a World Cup, and that's the way that he would into that Mount Rushmore discussion. But I think for me, Sexton brings a lot to that credibility around his success in not only Ireland, but then at clubland as well. And obviously World Player of the Year as well. So, you know, it's pretty hard to go and not have him in that.
every team he's in, like if he's not playing,
Lions, the Lions as well.
They're struggling. Like that is a hell of a thing to be able to say.
The other option that was thrown up, which is definitely not in the professional era, appropriately named Fossil-matic from YouTube, brought up Barry John. Now, there's no doubting Barry John was a long time before I was watching footy. My mum is Welsh, and she thinks Barry John is a legend. So apparently the Carlos before Carlos, the running first five, the guy who meant that Carlos, Larkham and Carter could play the way they did because he led the way. So, you know, fair play to Barry John. You're not in the professional era, so we can't really include it. We don't think we can compare, but, you know, you had a big influence.
We'll put him on top.
Yeah.
Get a big boulder on top of the other four.
And build up. So, yeah, at least that's acknowledging it. Now, there's a couple of other interesting segments, particularly the 20-minute red card. There was a lot of reaction to the 20-minute red card, talking about how, you know, if it's deliberate, longer. If it's not deliberate, make it 20 minutes, and that would be fair. So how do we get a campaign going to World Rugby and World Cup year if the fans are on board with this 20-minute card?
I think if you look at Super Rugby Pacific and what this system of yellow card, deal with it off the field, red 20, or it stays at a yellow card, is just the perfect example, because you can still red card for the whole game for any sort of, you know, vicious acts that are deliberate. I don't know, I like it. And speaking to all the players, they just love that it just cuts down the time. There's no looking at screens. And, you know, we are sometimes hard, you know, like we were probably a bit hard at the start of the show on Super Rugby Pacific, because ball and play is increasing. I think it was you who told me it's the most points Super Rugby Pacific's seen in the first 5 rounds.
Yep.
For what, a number of years.
Yes.
You know, there's more tries. I don't know, like, you got to start somewhere. Yeah. There are improvements in this comp, and this is a big one. The 20-minute red card and that whole system. It's not just the 20-minute red card, but it's that whole system of keeping us engaged, keeping us on the game and moving forward.
I think that's a fair point, and I suppose that's what made the weekend kind of disappointing for me, was that this roll was on and it shot itself in the foot. You know what I mean? It was entertaining, it was engaging, it was high scoring, at times close and riveting, and then, you know, it just kind of deflates the balloon a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, 7:30 Saturday night, the balloon will be pumped up.
Chiefs versus Blues.
I'll give you the tip.
Yeah.
Holy dooly. I think it's 7 o'clock.
7:05.
I'd be half an hour late.
Yeah. That's right. You can tuck the kids in and watch it on My Sky.
Yeah.
And
no, I'll be catching that live, don't you worry.
Yeah. With that being said, plenty of good footy coming this week. Looking to see all those top teams back out there, looking to see some great tries. So stay tuned to Sky. Make sure you get on rugbypass.com and see all of the analysis, and catch us at the Aotearoa Rugby Pod on YouTube. You can catch us on Audio Pod, catch us on Sky Sport, catch us wherever you like, wherever it works for you, and we'll keep on bringing you as much engaging rugby content as we can. Thank you very much, James Parsons, as ever. Bryn Hall over in Japan. Stay out of the sin bin, mate. You
Get hydrated after a few too many Kirins too, my old mate. You did well. You did well.
Rightio, and thank you very much. We'll see you again next week. Mā te wā.